What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the GSN Sports Network podcast, episode 108. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to have you with us. We're happy to have you with us. A little bit of a late show tonight. People are going to bed. People got to work in the morning. I understand. It's just business. We're going to get the show out for those listening in the morning, listening going into the weekend. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're trying to reach out to. Getting the message out in a clear, concise way is important for everybody. It's important for us on this show. It's important for everybody that participates on this show, participates in the community, participates in the Discord, online discussions, etc., message boards, article creation. It's important to get to the point. It's important to be clear and concise. And that's the case here in a lot of these topics today. And I got to be honest with you. Looking at the sports world, where we're at May 7th, we're getting ahead of ourselves. May 7th, 2025, the year of our Lord. There's not a lot going on in sports. Okay, we're kind of getting into MLB. MLB's heating up. It's not that there's nothing going on. You got MLB that's heating up. You got NHL playoffs that are more or less just have undergone the beginning. Essentially. So those are in their infancy, still a lot of hockey to be played. And then NBA, you got the NBA playoffs, which is in full force, and some exciting stuff going on there. And we'll talk about our beloved Detroit Pistons here in a little bit. But there's more things that are going on. It doesn't really regard breaking news. It doesn't regard breaking news, current events, brand new information, stuff like that. And you know how I know that? So if I navigate over to ESPN.com, now we get our information from a lot of different sports outlets, sources, etc., and then we can comment on them, talk about them as we see fit. But this is how I know that there's not a lot going on. U.S. women's national team star Mallory Swanson expecting first child. Now, while that is exciting stuff, while that's good information, while that's important for me to know, that's not breaking news. It shouldn't be on the top headlines on ESPN.com. It shouldn't be. Okay, and I get it. I see where they're coming from, and they're telling me without telling me there's not a lot going on right now that can be broken to the world. Now, obviously, you got Curry with the injury, and that will affect them significantly. But listen, you got to focus on what you got. You got a lot of players at your disposal. Okay, Minnesota's a good team. As they tied the series, but actually they're down game one, facing game two tomorrow, but they're going to be fine. Golden State's going to be fine. They don't have to worry about much. So without beating a dead horse, there's not a lot going on, but we're going to talk about the things going on the sidelines because that's what's really important. That's what we're here to talk about. So something that's a kind of a near and dear topic to my heart comes to Nick Saban, former head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he was in headlines in the recent days, and he's talking about NIL rules. He's supposedly met with President Donald Trump on this matter. Now, if you don't know, Trump actually did a speech at the University of Alabama this past week. So he was in the area. I'm sure him and Saban had some closed-door conversations, which then became breaking news, which I didn't hear too much about it. I haven't really heard it really anywhere. I had to stumble upon it going and navigating through various articles on the web. But basically, Saban wants to change NIL. Now, he denies vehemently that this is why he retired as head coach at Alabama. Now, they had faced some tough years. They had still managed to defy the odds in a lot of cases. Okay, and they were doing that in the midst of NIL's existence. But it was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. So that's what kind of tells me there was some truth to it. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. But reading into how traditional Nick Saban is as a coach, I would think there's some truth to it. And he hated NIL from the get-go. Okay, he built Alabama based on their football prowess, based on their allegiance from their players to the university because they were such a good school. They based it on their prowess. Now, if you could put a dollar amount to it, if you're looking at the endowments and whatnot that now universities can tap into to pay these athletes individually, now that hurt your prowess a little bit. Your prowess really isn't worth as much as a dollar sign and some zeros next to it, or some digits and commas and whatnot. So he found that he couldn't compete with NIL. He couldn't compete with the current state of affairs, which I would agree. It's really difficult to do that when you got, millions upon millions of dollars coming into these universities that they can use, especially on their income reaping sports like football, like basketball. So when you can't compete with that, and basically your money is just as good as anybody else's, then you're going to have rival schools. You're going to have other schools that are basically make up the SEC. It's not just Alabama anymore, and that's a true fact just based on Nick Saban's departure. It's evident he had an impact on the game of football and on the Crimson Tide. But he wants to fight NIL. He wants to get rid of it. Now, does that mean if he succeeds in doing this, is he going to come back as a coach? None of that is on the table. None of that is known information at this time. But it is interesting that he's going to Trump, trying to get an executive order passed and whatnot. I am in full support of that. Okay, now that's a hot take, and I understand that. There's going to be people that have some backlash towards me for that. But it should be based on the school prowess. Now, I hate Alabama more than anybody else. That just has to be said. But when it comes down to building the prosperity, building the tradition, and building the legacy that Saban did at Alabama, or it could have been at any school. Okay, he's a former coach at the Michigan State Spartans, assistant coach. So to hate on Saban, really, I can't do it. I can do it to a certain extent, and I can, if the circumstances are correct, then I can, and I will, and I do. I have. But in this instance, I'm on his side. A lot of people have said college athletes work really hard. And I know. I lived in a house with college athletes. I know how hard they work. I know how much time they put in, outside of game time to practice, to study, to work out, to have team meetings. It's a lot of work. So in that same breath, a lot of people have said, they've made it hard for me to rebut to it, saying these college athletes deserve to be paid. Okay, they deserve to be compensated, not just per diems on away games and trips where we got to take a plane to or take the bus. Not just per diem checks or hard cash. We're talking about checks. We're talking about paychecks. We're talking about essentially contracts before they're in the professional sports world. So I think that they took it too far, and now we're seeing the ugly head. We have been seeing the ugly head that NIL has reared in recent years, just since it's been a thing, really, which hasn't been that long, believe it or not. So it has to be known that the NCAA has paid $250,000 from their own pocket to pay lobbyists to fight for NIL. These kids deserve it. Basically saying the same things that I've said in support of NIL. They're doing that too, but they're saying it to a larger audience of people that are actually making the laws and rules and regulations in this country. So you tell me which is going to have more pull. Now, if Trump goes and makes the executive order, okay, no NIL or very limited NIL. I think that's what has to be assumed would be the case. I guess I don't know how that would play out, because there's a lot of parties that have to come together and have a meeting of the minds to allow something like that to take place. Now, it's not just going to happen overnight. It's not just going to happen by the snap of a finger. But I think it's something that could happen. I think it's been long overdue but this is the thing is, I thought, now it's too late, the NCAA should have got out and ahead of this issue beforehand. But why would they? Their ratings are good. Their numbers are good. The student athletes are happy. Now they're jumping ship and playing musical chairs, jumping in the transfer portal, which goes hand in hand with NIL. I think it's just as much of a problem, and they're problems that feed off of each other. But Is it going anywhere? That is yet to be determined, and it has to be throttled. Okay, it has to be nerfed, as my gamers would call it. Right, it has to be nerfed because it's just too wild westy right now. There's too much. You can do whatever you want, kind of thing. Give me a blank check, or give me a mil more than this school, and I'll come play for you, at least for a season. So there's certain things, certain contracts that are being written up day by day. The transfer portal has its own issues. Actually, it goes hand in hand with NIL, but the transfer portal has its own problems independently, aside from NIL. So it's kind of a dueling swords situation. So you have two people battling it out, but then they join forces and become one as one big problem for the NCAA and traditionalists like Nick Saban and like myself. Okay, now don't you remember the old days where you had to show some allegiance, and whenever school you went to, in a lot of cases, you might have not had the best attitude toward the coach or toward the regime or toward whatever was going on. But you toughed it out, at least for that season and another season. Okay, now you're losing a year eligibility, or maybe you're playing and you're pissed off about playing for a certain university or school. Well, too bad. You should have thought about that when you signed up. Okay, you have to fight through adversity a little bit. And then we'll give you an opportunity once the time comes. If it's a mutual release situation, then we'll let you go and things are all good and you can go to your new school. That still happened back then. It didn't happen to the capacity that it does now. That's the thing. And then you introduce NIL to that, and it becomes a big shitstorm because now you're paying these athletes. Now they're getting more from this school. This is causing them to get into the transfer portal. They're having communications behind closed doors with outside sources, and it becomes a big mess. So you guys know I could talk about NIL. I could talk about the transfer portal forever. Sobo and I have had a lot of great conversations about it. I'd like to bring some more people in on it just because it's nice to have different perspectives on NIL and this whole process with paying student athletes, because there's people in both camps. There's actually a surprising amount of people in the NIL camp, which are in my circle of some sort. And I don't disagree with their thought process. I disagree with agreeing with that. I guess I don't agree with that philosophy per se. I agree in a middle ground that has some compensation for the work that these student athletes put in, but also where they have to stay with the school that they are at for at least a year and a half. And then based on the means, I like to have the transfer process take place like it did in the old days before the transfer portal. That's what I would like. Keep NIL to a certain degree, but get rid of the transfer portal to a major degree. So there's some middle ground I think that can be found there. The perfect formula has not been found, but now we're seeing the nose hit the grindstone a little bit. We're seeing the rubber hit the pavement, if you will, on this whole NIL thing. It's taken longer than I thought it would, but it happened, and we're here now. Let's move on. Let's talk about the NBA. Let's talk about the Detroit Pistons and talk about that piss poor finish. To really, I mean, you're not winning a single game. I mean, at your own place, at the Little Caesars Arena, which if they were playing at the Palace, I'm sure they would have won at least one game. But you want to talk about Cade Cunningham not taking control of the game? That's what that game 6 was. It was terrible. Okay, it was terrible. You were grasping at straws. You were fighting like hell. Staying down 10 kind of reminded me a little bit about the Michigan State Auburn game in the Elite Eight. Just you're fighting from behind the whole time, except the difference is with the Pistons, they found their way and they clawed their way back into that game, and they should have won that game. Okay. Now you can fast forward all the way to the last play of the game. Okay, where Cade passes it off and it goes out of bounds, but Beasley or what that was didn't expect the ball. That you can't expect him to react and get the ball. Cade, that's your team. Take control of your team and control the moment. And at least if you miss that 3-point shot that you had to get, because Brunson just stunned the entire arena with that three that he didn't even need. Now you have to get a 3 to tie the game, force overtime. You got to take control of that team, put the team on your back, and at least take the shot. Take the shot. Because you can't pass the ball off in that situation. All right. Now I get it. Cade's still a young man. He's got a lot of growing pains to deal with. And this is the first taste of the playoffs that this team has had. Still a very young team. There's a lot of players going into free agency that I'm not too happy about for rebuilding going into the offseason, heading into the Cancun season. But it was just it was a piss poor finish, and you should have won that series. Really, at least force a game 7. At least force a game 7. Finish out the game at home, and you had the ability, you had the gusto to do it. You can call them a fourth quarter team, but really, they never lost hope the entire game. But it was just grasping at straws, even when you wanted that foul called on Hardaway Jr. On the baseline there. To probably win the game, send him to the line with 3 shots. Granted, didn't make the shot. He didn't make it. And you hope he makes 2 of them. But no, the foul isn't called and the game's over. And because nothing was called, you can't review it. So, but see, if you're trying to win games like that, then you're already out of it. You're already out of it. You're not going to win a lot of games like that. You might if you fought like hell and it was a back and forth game the entire game, or at least for most of the latter half of the game. But if you do something like that, you don't really play well, you don't win a single game at home, and you want that call, yes, I get it. I get it. It was a foul. In that time, score situation, those officials have to make that call. They have to. Okay, you got 3 sets of eyes on court, and you should have at least 2 sets on that matchup, or at least nearby in the vicinity. Definitely 1 set. Okay, that lead official was in the corner, but hypothetically speaking, and I don't know how PCAs work in the NBA per se, it could be different. That's going to be the trail or the C official on that side. Should have been made, but the fact of the matter is it wasn't made. So now you're really fighting like hell to be in contention, and it's too little, too late. Okay, I commend them for the run, but I have to knock them a little bit because of the finish, because of how they finished games. Now they won some good games in that series, and I think they should build off of that. But it's a lot of work to be done in the offseason. And I mean, you want to talk about Jalen Brunson, and you want to talk about the New York Knicks. They just went up 2-0 against the Celtics, beating them by a point again. And wow, this team's playing poised. This team's playing really poised, and they're doing what they have to do to win games, especially when the cards are stacked against them. I would say no one's expecting them to be up 2-0, let alone even 1-0, or even have it be 1-1. That win in the win column really wasn't expected going into this game, especially based on playing the Celtics, playing a hell of a team in the Celtics, and compared to how they played against the Detroit Pistons. It's kind of surprising. They're finding another gear, and that's important for them if they want to make a deep run in the NBA playoffs. So Nuggets, Thunder, Denver leads 1-0. Crazy comeback in that last game. And I watched the whole ass end of that game, and wow, you got to give it to the Denver Nuggets in that one. And they did a hell of a job. They did a hell of a job. I'm really proud of this Nuggets team. They're fighting from behind. They're fighting and playing against a great Oklahoma City Thunder team, which they're getting absolutely throttled by right now. It is am I seeing that right? It's a 40-point game. Wow. 40-point game. Thunder are up, just dominating, playing great basketball. And then we talked about Minnesota and Golden State, how that's going to fare with Curry being out. They say a week, but it could be more than that. I'd love to get Kyle Lutz on here. We plan on getting him on here in the next couple days, if not very soon, to talk about NBA stuff as it gets hot and heavy. I want to get his takes on the Pistons. Where are they at? Where are they going? Which of these free agents, if any, are going to stay in Detroit? I got a lot of questions for Kyle, so we're going to be bringing him on here and talking about that here very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Okay. And we got to talk about the Champions League. Got to talk about Champions League because that's what's going on as well right now. See, that's what I mean. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's kind of going on in spurts, and none of it is real. It's just very routine. It's very routine. Now, you got different pockets of the internet that are very interested in one or a few of these topics that we've discussed tonight. But that's where you got to find the pockets of information from those, not a smorgasbord. You got to find them from people that are actually dialed into that individual topic. Okay. And that touches back, brings it full circle to my point earlier. Clear, concise, to the point. Do that, but also bring things full circle. But gotta make sense when you're speaking. So that's why I trust the people that are dialed in to these individual topics. So that's what we find. And wow, what a game by Inter Milan and Barcelona yesterday. Just absolute shootout. And Inter winds up winning 4-3 with the game winner made by Davide Fratesi, the Italian boy, in the 99th minute. Wow, what a hell of a game. What a hell of a game. So I actually did a pit stop yesterday, went and grabbed some tacos, Taco Tuesday. And I watched the goal by Acerbi in the 93rd minute. And that was the equalizer to tie it at 3. And Barcelona really, they fought back in the second half. They were down, I think they were down 3-0. Or they were down 2-0. Down 2-0, tied it up. Then they got up 3-2. And then Inter just turned on the jets. The afterburners were on. And they came back and won that game. What a game. If you could go back and watch the recap of that game, it's worth a watch. Okay, they were tied on aggregate in the first leg. Now the second leg, Inter takes a 7-6 lead on aggregate against Barcelona. That's going to be a good one to watch. PSG takes it to Arsenal today. They lead 3-1 on aggregate after the second leg. And, I mean, we're talking the semis. So Bayern's out. Real Madrid's out. A couple big teams are out. Big names are watching this probably from a pool bar somewhere in Cancun. And they're watching their competitors play for a Champions League title. So it's going to be hot and heavy. There's a lot of unknowns with the teams that are still here. I like Arsenal. They're getting throttled lately, but I like them as a team. I like them as a unit. And PSG, they're really, Hakimi is really taking control of this team. Fabian Ruiz also with a goal today. They're putting the team on the backs like a backpack. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. And PSG is having a resurgence since Mbappe left, since Neymar left. I mean, you're talking about since Messi left. You're talking about a team that really had to rebuild. They're not just losing to Curry and losing him for a week. They're losing 3 superstars over the course of a few years. And when they lost Mbappe to Real Madrid, and obviously, Mbappe, he's one of those guys you just don't know if he's human or not because of how good he is. But to lose Mbappe from PSG, and PSG was a super club, okay? It has to be known. Now, Mbappe is nowhere to be found. Real Madrid is kind of the overall outright favorite to win the Champions League. We know that. But PSG, they're still involved. They're still a super club, I think, in my opinion. And they're still a tough team to beat. And they're proving that after the second leg here against Arsenal, the Gunners. So, going to be a good finish. I don't care who wins that at Inter Barca series. It's looking like it could be PSG winning this semi here. But it's going to be a hell of a final no matter how it plays out. So that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm dialed into is the final. That's what I'm looking forward to. All right. So watch the Champions League. Check it out. Some great soccer to watch. Great soccer. Like we said, the NHL is in full force. They're going through their playoffs. We'll let them do their thing, and then we'll talk about them here in a week or so. But something else that's also pressing is the NFL, and this was just released the other day. The Ravens released Justin Tucker, obviously their profound kicker. Now, he's been facing some allegations. He's been facing some scandal. And it has to be known that he's dealing with scandal. And you got to think about it from the Ravens' perspective. Now, I'm looking at an article here on theringer.com. Check this out if you get some time. Looks like a good one. These are the guys that are dialed into this exact issue, which is the Justin Tucker release from the Baltimore Ravens. The title says, the Ravens made it clear that releasing Justin Tucker was a football decision. Now, that seems like a paraphrasing from a direct quote. Could be. Also, it could be hearsay. But it seems like it sums it up pretty good. It was a football decision. Okay, now the Baltimore Ravens, they have a reputation to uphold that can't be disguised in all of this. Now, when they release him, they're trying to get somebody new. Obviously, he's a 35-year-old kicker, but he's very consistent. Obviously, Vinatieri, we know how long he played, right? So age is really not an issue from the kicker position, in my opinion. So it's just one of those things. It's a difficult decision to make, but I think you can have some solace in knowing why you did what you did and when you did it, right? You got the draft that just took place, and you have these allegations going on against Justin Tucker. Now, whether true or not has yet to be determined, but the list of women that were harassed is growing by the day, which usually tends to happen in these types of deals, unfortunately. So it's just one of those things. You got to think about it. The Baltimore Ravens, they've struggled. Let's just be honest. They've struggled in years past, and they on paper, they look like a team that has it all. They have everything. They have all the tools. Especially the run game. You got the pass game. Derrick Henry basically he's like a runaway train, basically. And Lamar Jackson, I think he's played very well, and especially in the playoffs, he's played well. Justin Tucker has done his job at kicker. But to touch on Lamar a little bit, he's done his thing, but it's just been not good enough. It's kind of like the Bills. Not good enough. You're right there. You're all over it. You're circling it. You're surrounding it. But it's just not good enough. And that's kind of been the story of the Bills and the Ravens. Both these teams are very similar. Okay? Aside from the scandal side. Now, the Bills don't have any scandal over there. So we ain't got to worry about that. But the Ravens, they're dealing with this. Obviously, it's a tough decision. Tough to make these calls, especially in these times with the draft. Counting on a kicker is something that cannot be undermined. It has to be thought about seriously because these guys make up a big component of your team when it comes to needing 3 points, needing extra points, whatever. So they're counting on him to do a job, and he's expected to do that job. Goes back to being dialed in, doing one thing. That's what kickers do. They kick the ball through the uprights. That's what they do. So we don't want to beat a dead horse with that one. That one's really not even worthy of conversation that much unless you want to dive into it with a microscope. But teams don't like scandal. Don't surround yourself with scandal. That's the thing when you're up there. I could imagine when you're up there in prowess, when you're up there in prestige, playing for the NFL, playing for any professional league. It's easy to get caught up in that kind of stuff, but it's up to you to resist that and stay on the narrow path. Justin Tucker seems to have strayed away from that path. It is what it is. It happens to the best. So moving on, let's talk about the Gin Sports Network Challenge 6 scheduled for September 13th, 2025. Ads have been posted. Everything's out there. The registration form is out there. Get registered. Get your partner. Get registered ASAP for the GSN 6 coming this fall. And you got some more time. Usually we're knocking on the event here in less than a month. But we got some more time under our belt to look forward to the event this year. So we're excited. We're excited. Come on out. Check us out. It's for a great cause, for the Thomas Smith Memorial Foundation. So check us out. It's a great gig. I think you'd enjoy it. We're going to get Rocco on here to talk about the NFL draft and kind of the fallout that came from the NFL draft. So I'm going to save that for another time. But we're really excited with the NFL season as it returns this fall. It seems like we're just running around in circles. We got one season ends, you're on to the next one. That's the beauty of sports, but it's just an ode to how fast time goes by. So take your time and enjoy the time that we have. There's nothing like the present. That's why they call it the present. It's a gift. So take that to heart, and I hope you do. We'll leave it at that, though, for this episode of the GSN Podcast. Make sure to check us out on all of our links, ginsportsnetwork.com on the web. Check us out on IG at Gin Sports Network and find our link tree with all of our links in the bottom of this podcast in the description. For now, I'm John J. II with the Gin Sports Network podcast. Have a great night.